The myth becomes reality. The central chamber of the Galactic Confederation fell silent as Grand Arbiter Vex Mora entered. The massive amphitheater, carved from a single asteroid and reinforced with quantum-stabilized force fields, housed representatives from over 300 species that had governed known space for 12 millennia. Vex Mora's tendrils rippled with bioluminescence, a sign of extreme agitation among the Coraxi species. "The Emergency Council is now in session," announced Vex Mora, her voice amplified throughout the chamber. "We face a situation unprecedented in our history." Councillor Zith of the Arthing Collective clicked his mandibles in impatience. "Grand Arbiter, with respect, calling an emergency session requires extraordinary justification. Many of us traveled for days to attend." "The justification is simple, Councillor," Vex Mora replied, her bioluminescence shifting to a deep crimson. "The mythical destroyers have returned. Or rather, they were never mythical at all." A wave of murmurs swept through the chamber. Elder Kyorin of the Medusan Scholars rose from his seat, his ancient frame supported by an exoskeleton. "Clarify your statement, Grand Arbiter. Which mythical destroyers are you referring to?" Vex Mora gestured, and a holographic projection materialized in the center of the chamber. It showed a sleek vessel of unfamiliar design, angular and utilitarian, bearing strange markings. 3 cycles ago, our long-range sensors detected unusual energy signatures in the outer rim near the void expanse. The signatures matched no known propulsion system in our database. I dispatched Scout Fleet Epsilon 9 to investigate. She paused, her tendrils going still, another sign of extreme distress among her kind. Scout Fleet Epsilon 9 has been destroyed, all 42 vessels. Before communications ceased, they transmitted this. The hologram shifted to show chaotic battle footage. Confederate vessels, some of the most advanced in known space, were being systematically dismantled by weapons that seemed to bypass their shields entirely. The attacking ships moved with extraordinary precision, executing maneuvers that should have torn them apart from forces alone. "This is impossible," whispered Technarch Urix, the Confederation's foremost expert on propulsion and weapon systems. "Those maneuvers would kill any organic pilot." "That is correct, Technarch," said Vex Mora, "because according to all our biological understanding, no organic being could survive such forces, except perhaps the species we believe to be nothing but cautionary tales told to frighten children." Dead silence fell across the chamber as understanding dawned. "Humans," Elder Kyorin whispered, the word hanging in the air like a death sentence. For thousands of years, the Galactic Confederation had passed down stories of the human extinction wars that nearly destroyed the early interstellar community. According to legend, humans were a paradoxical species, physically unimpressive yet unnaturally resilient, technologically limited yet dangerously innovative, individually weak yet collectively unstoppable. The legends claimed they had been contained in their home system, quarantined behind an impenetrable barrier for the safety of all other sentient life. Most modern species believed humans were allegorical, fictional monsters created to teach young ones about the dangers of unchecked aggression and innovation without wisdom. "We've always dismissed the human archives as nothing more than mythology," continued Vex Mora. "As civilization advanced and peace prevailed, we convinced ourselves that no species could truly be as the humans were described. The concept violated our understanding of evolutionary development." She gestured again, and the hologram changed to show a new image, a bipedal being in some kind of armored suit, standing amid Confederate wreckage. Despite the armor, the general shape was unmistakable. "This confirms what the Scout fleet discovered before their destruction. Humans are real. They have somehow breached the quarantine barrier. And they are on the move." The chamber erupted in panicked voices until Vex Mora raised her tendrils for silence. "We have dispatched a diplomatic vessel Harmonious Exchange to attempt communication. The humans have agreed to a meeting." "This is madness," shouted Councillor Zith. "If the legends contain even a fragment of truth, We should mobilize the combined fleet immediately and start a war we cannot win, countered Elder Kjorin. The archives are clear. Direct confrontation with humans only strengthens their resolve. Their psychology is unique. They become more unified, more determined when threatened. Technarch Urix rose from his seat. The archives also suggest humans are curious by nature. Perhaps genuine diplomatic engagement might succeed where force would fail. We shall soon find out, said Vexmora grimly. The harmonious exchange has reached the rendezvous coordinates. A hologram shifted again to show a real-time transmission from the diplomatic vessel. A human delegation had boarded, 5 of them, varying in appearance, but all sharing the same basic vital form. They wore no environmental suits despite the atmosphere being calibrated for Confederation physiology, which should have been toxic to most carbon-based life. One of the humans stepped forward. Unlike the others who wore what appeared to be military uniforms, this one was dressed in simple gray garments. "I am Admiral Helena Reyes of the United Earth Alliance," the human said in perfect galactic standard, taking the assembled council by surprise. "We've monitored your communications for some time. We know you call yourselves the Galactic Confederation. We know you believe we were safely contained, and we know you fear us." Vexmora's diplomatic training took over. "Admiral Reyes, I am Grand Arbiter Vexmora. The Confederation extends peaceful greetings. There must be some misunderstanding regarding our previous encounter with your scout vessels." "Those weren't scouts," interrupted another human, taller and with darker coloration. "That was a standard patrol responding to energy signatures consistent with the barrier that has imprisoned our species for 3,000 years. The Confederation representatives exchanged alarmed glances. The quarantine barrier had been breached not by humans escaping, but by Confederation technology being detected. "I assure you," continued Vexmora, "the Confederation of today has no knowledge of any barrier. The events you describe occurred so long ago that many believe them to be merely legends." Admiral Rice smiled, but there was something predatory in the expression. A convenient belief. Unfortunately, the barrier around our home system was very real, as were the automated defense platforms programmed to destroy any vessel attempting to leave. For 3 millennia, we were caged in our own solar system, forced to solve problems of overpopulation and resource scarcity without the option of expansion. "And yet, here you are," observed Elder Kjorin, "which suggests you overcame these obstacles." "We did," Rice confirmed. "It took us nearly 2,000 years to understand the technology of the barrier. Another 500 to dismantle it without triggering the defense platforms, all while believing ourselves alone in a hostile universe that had tried to exterminate us once before." The implications hung heavy in the chamber. The ancient Confederation had not merely contained the humans, they had attempted genocide. "What are your intentions now?" asked Vexmora, dreading the answer. "That depends on you," said Admiral Reyes. "Humanity does not desire war. Despite what your legends may claim, we never have. But we will not be imprisoned again. We will not be exterminated, and we will not be denied our place among the stars." She gestured, and one of the other humans handed her a small device. "This data package contains our terms. In summary, we claim a space of 500 light-years around Sol as sovereign human territory. We demand reparations for 3,000 years of imprisonment. And we require full access to Confederation technological and historical archives." "These demands are unprecedented," protested Councillor Zith. "No single species has ever claimed such a vast territory." Admiral Rice's expression hardened. "No species has ever been subjected to what we have endured. You should also know that this is not a negotiation. It is a courtesy notification." "And if we refuse?" asked Vexmora. The human admiral's reply was chilling in its simplicity. "Then we will take what we need." As if on cue, alarms began blaring throughout the chamber. A security officer rushed to Vexmora's side and whispered urgently in her ear. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded Vexmora. Our long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures throughout Confederate space, hundreds of them, approaching key worlds and installations. Admiral Reyes remained perfectly calm. While we speak here, the first expeditionary fleet of the United Earth Alliance is moving into position. They will take no hostile action unless provoked. Consider it. Insurance against hasty decisions. This is an act of war, shouted Counselor Zith. No, countered Admiral Reyes. This is a species claiming its right to exist. You have 24 standard hours to consider our terms. With that, the human delegation turned and departed the diplomatic vessel, leaving the Confederation leadership in stunned silence. They've planned this for centuries, whispered Elder Kyorin in horrified awe. While we grew complacent, they grew stronger, more united. Everything in the ancient archives warned us of their nature, yet we dismissed it as myth. Vexmora's tendrils had gone completely dark, a sign of the deepest despair among her species. Have the Defense Ministry analyze their capabilities immediately, she ordered, and assemble our best diplomatic minds. We have 24 hours to decide the fate of the Confederation. As the emergency session descended into chaos, Elder Kyorin accessed his personal terminal, searching the most ancient sections of the Confederation archives. There had to be something there, some insight from their ancestors who had encountered humans before, that might help them navigate this crisis. What he found chilled him to his core. The final entry in the Human Containment Initiative, dated nearly 3 millennia ago, contained a warning. Should containment ever fail, do not resist. Do not threaten. Seek common ground immediately. For humans are unique among all known species in one terrifying aspect. They do not understand the concept of impossible. Where others see insurmountable obstacles, humans see challenges to overcome. And they will overcome them, regardless of the cost. The stars tremble. The Confederation War Council had been in continuous session for 18 hours. The massive strategic projection dominating the center of the chamber showed a devastating reality. Human vessels had positioned themselves near every major Confederation world, installation, and strategic asset. Over 800 locations simultaneously. Impossible, muttered Defense Minister Kallax for perhaps the dozenth time as he studied the tactical displays. His species, the four-armed Brevari, were renowned military strategists. No civilization could coordinate a deployment of this scale without decades of preparation. And yet here we are, replied Grand Arbiter Vexmora, her tendrils now a pale blue of resignation. What options can you present to the Council, Minister? Kallax's four hands worked frantically across his tactical interface. Even with our combined fleet, we could only engage approximately 15% of the human vessels before our forces would be critically depleted. Their positioning is perfect. They've accounted for every contingency. Elder Kyorin, who had been silent for hours, finally spoke. I have spent the night reviewing the sealed archives from the First Contact era. There is something you all must understand about humans before we decide our course of action. The chamber quieted as attention turned to the ancient scholar. Our ancestors did not imprison humanity out of malice or fear alone, but because of what they witnessed during the First Contact War. The humans were vastly outmatched in technology, numbers, and resources, yet they nearly prevailed through sheer adaptability. Kyorin activated his own projection, showing ancient battle footage that most present had never seen. The quality was poor by modern standards, but the content was clear enough. Primitive human vessels, clearly improvised from civilian craft, executing suicide runs against Confederation warships. Human soldiers continuing to fight despite grievous injuries that would have incapacitated any Confederation species. Captured humans escaping confinement through methods that defied security protocols. What you must understand, continued Kyorin, is that humans do not think like us. When faced with superior force, most sentient species calculate the odds and surrender if defeat is certain. Humans calculate the same odds and then reject them. They create new strategies, repurpose civilian technology for war, sacrifice individuals for collective survival, and most importantly, they learn and adapt with terrifying speed. "So you counsel surrender?" asked Counselor Zith, his mandibles clicking in agitation. "I counsel understanding," corrected Kyorin. "In the archives, I found testimonies from the commanders who fought against humans. They all described the same phenomenon. The longer the conflict continued, the more effective humans became. They analyzed Confederation technology and tactics, then developed countermeasures within days. What began as a decisive technological advantage for our ancestors eroded with each engagement." Technarch Urix, who had been analyzing the human vessel's capabilities, suddenly looked up from his console with alarm. "Grand Arbiter, we have a situation. Our attempts to scan the human vessels have been unsuccessful, but we just detected massive energy spikes across their fleet. They appear to be charging weapons systems." The room fell silent. "The deadline approaches," said Vexmora quietly. "We must decide now. Do we resist and risk extinction, or do we accept their terms and preserve what we can of our civilization?" Before anyone could respond, a communication request chimed through the chamber systems. It was from Admiral Reyes. "Put her through," ordered Vexmora. The holographic projection shifted to show the human admiral, her expression grave. "Grand Arbiter, we've detected unusual energy signatures from several of your military installations. Our systems interpret this as preparation for possible hostilities. I want to be absolutely clear. Any aggressive action will be met with immediate and proportional response." Vexmora glanced at Defense Minister Kellax, who reluctantly nodded confirmation. Some hardline commanders had indeed been preparing defensive systems against orders. "Admiral Reyes, I assure you no attack has been authorized. We are still deliberating your terms." "Your deadline expires in 30 minutes, replied Reyes coldly. "I suggest you deliberate faster." The transmission ended. "They detected our defense grid activating," said Kellax in disbelief. "That system uses quantum encryption and operates on isolated networks. It should be impossible to detect externally." "Add it to the list of impossibilities they've accomplished," sighed Elder Kyorin. "The archives warned us. Humans specialize in achieving the impossible." A junior aide rushed into the chamber, pausing to catch his breath before addressing Vexmora. "Grand Arbiter, we've received a priority message from Research Outpost Theta 12 in the Void Expanse." "Theta 12. That's where we detected the first human vessels," noted Counselor Zith. The aide continued. "The research team reports they've determined the origin of the energy signatures that attracted our attention initially. It wasn't human propulsion systems, as we believed. It was our own technology, specifically components of the ancient quarantine barrier." Vexmora's tendrils rippled in confusion. "Explain." "According to the research team, portions of the quarantine barrier began failing centuries ago due to planned obsolescence. Our ancestors never expected it would need to contain a species for more than 1,000 years. The energy signatures we detected were the final components of the barrier disintegrating." Elder Kyorin closed his eyes in understanding. "So the humans didn't break free. The prison simply failed, as it was designed to do. And our investigation inadvertently alerted them to our existence," added Vexmora, the implications dawning on her. "Their aggression isn't unprovoked. They believe we actively maintained their imprisonment and came to check on our handiwork when it began to fail." "That changes everything," said Counselor Zith. "If they believe we're the same civilization that imprisoned them, then we need to correct that misunderstanding immediately," finished Vexmora. She turned to her communications officer. "Establish contact with Admiral Reyes. Priority channel." Within moments, the human admiral's image appeared once more. "Grand Arbiter, have you reached a decision?" "Admiral Reyes, we've discovered critical information that may affect our discussions. The quarantine barrier that contained your species was not maintained by the modern Confederation. In fact, most of our member species had dismissed its existence as myth until your arrival. The barrier was failing due to its age. That's what our scout vessels were investigating when they encountered your forces. For the first time, Reyes showed a flicker of surprise. You expect me to believe your civilization forgot about imprisoning an entire species? Not forgot, corrected Elder Kyorin, stepping into view. Mythologized. The Confederation you face today is not the same one that quarantined humanity. Our civilization spans 12,000 years. Admiral, the quarantine decision was made by species that, in many cases, no longer exist or have evolved beyond recognition. Can you prove this claim? Asked Reyes, skepticism evident in her voice. We can, said Vexmora. We will grant your delegation full access to our historical archives, unredacted and complete. You will see that for over 2,000 years, the quarantine of Earth was nothing more than a historical footnote, then a legend, and finally, a myth used to caution against aggression. Admiral Reyes was silent for a long moment, consulting quietly with her officers off-screen. Very well, she said finally. I will lead a delegation to review your archives personally. But our fleet remains in position until I am satisfied. 24 hours later, Admiral Reyes stood before the Confederation Council again, her expression thoughtful rather than hostile. We've verified your claims, she announced. The modern Confederation indeed had no active role in maintaining our imprisonment. Your ancestors feared what they did not understand, and we paid the price for their fear. Then you will withdraw your vessels? Asked Vexmora hopefully. No, replied Reyes firmly. Our terms regarding sovereign territory and reparations stand. The imprisonment of humanity cost us thousands of years of potential development and expansion. That debt must be acknowledged. Before protests could erupt, she raised her hand. However, we are willing to modify our approach. Instead of demanding immediate cession of territory, we propose a phased integration plan. Human settlements will expand gradually, with cooperative governance in regions where our territories overlap. Technology exchange will be mutual rather than one-sided. Elder Kyorin leaned forward with interest. And what do you seek from us beyond territory? Knowledge, said Reyes simply. Despite our technological achievements, we are newcomers to the galactic community. We need to understand the political landscape, the cultures we'll encounter, the mistakes others have made that we can avoid. Vexmora's tendrils shifted to a cautious green, the first positive emotional display since the crisis began. This is a foundation we can build upon, Admiral. But I must ask, why maintain your military presence if your intentions are truly peaceful? Admiral Reyes smiled, but there was still steel behind it. Because humans have learned one lesson thoroughly over our long isolation. Never negotiate from a position of weakness. Our fleet remains until agreements are signed and implementation begins. And if we refuse these modified terms? Asked Counselor Zith. Then we return to our original demands, said Reyes matter-of-factly, backed by force if necessary. The council chambers erupted in heated discussion until Vexmora called for order. Admiral Reyes, would you permit our council time to discuss your proposal privately? Of course. You have 6 hours. Once the human delegation had departed, Elder Kyorin addressed the assembled representatives. What we face is not merely a diplomatic crisis, but an evolutionary one. The archives describe humans as biological paradoxes, a species that should have destroyed itself through aggression, but instead channeled that trait into relentless progress. They should have stagnated in isolation, yet they continued to advance. They should have fractured into competing factions, yet they stand before us united. What are you suggesting, Elder? Asked Vexmora. I am suggesting that integration with humanity may be the revitalizing force our Confederation needs. For millennia, we have enjoyed peace and stability, but at the cost of innovation and adaptability. The humans offer us something we have long lacked, a drive to achieve the impossible. Technarch Urix nodded slowly. I've analyzed their vessel designs. They approach problems differently than our engineers, less elegantly perhaps, but with remarkable effectiveness. There is much we could learn from each other. Defense Minister Kellex reluctantly agreed. From a strictly military perspective, better to have them as allies than adversaries. Their capacity for asymmetric warfare alone makes them formidable. As the Council deliberated, the outcome became increasingly clear. 6 hours later, when Admiral Reyes returned, Vexmore announced the Confederation's decision. "We accept your terms for phased integration and mutual exchange, Admiral Reyes. The Galactic Confederation welcomes humanity to the stars, not as subjects or adversaries, but as partners." Reyes nodded, satisfaction evident in her posture. "A wise choice, Grand Arbiter. Humanity has waited 3,000 years to take our place among the stars. We have no desire to rule them, only to ensure we are never caged again." As the formal agreements were prepared, Elder Kiorin approached Admiral Reyes privately. "There is one question that has troubled me, Admiral. How did humanity remain unified during your long isolation? Our understanding of your species suggested you were prone to division and conflict." Reyes smiled, this time with genuine warmth rather than predatory intent. "When our ancestors realized we were trapped, they could have turned on each other, fighting over the limited resources of our home system. Instead, they made a choice that defined our civilization. If we couldn't expand outward, we would expand inward. We developed technologies to extend our solar system's habitability, transform dead worlds into gardens, and built orbital habitats that house billions." She paused, gazing out at the stars visible through the council chamber's transparent dome. "But most importantly, we cultivated patience. We knew that someday, somehow, we would break free of our prison. And when that day came, we were determined to face the galaxy not as a fractured, primitive species, but as a unified force that could never be imprisoned again." Elder Kiorin nodded slowly. "And now you have achieved that goal." "Not quite," replied Reyes, her gaze still fixed on the stars. "This is just the beginning. Humanity has 3,000 years of exploration to catch up on, and we've always been very, very curious." As news of the agreement spread throughout Confederation space, reactions ranged from terror to excitement. But one thing was universally acknowledged: the galaxy would never be the same again. The species that had been nothing but a myth, a cautionary tale told to frighten children, had returned, and the stars themselves seemed to tremble at the possibilities.